Hi guys and welcome back. It's been a little over a month now since I set up my little woodland scape over there, and today it's finally time to start planting. So the tank has been dark cycling for a little over a month now, and we can see that it is full of tannins. So the manzanita wood has been releasing so much of it. I water changed about 3 times, so I did 3 50% water changes over the course of this month. So manzanita is known to be a very tannic wood, so it's going to keep releasing over the next months, and after a while it is going to start to stabilize. But if, like me, you don't really like having tannins in your tank and you're not really into black water setups, you can add Purigen to your filter, and that's really going to make the water become crystal clear again. So a lot of you have been asking me to try a black water setup, so this is as close as I'm willing to get to one of those. It's just not my thing. So before I can actually plant the tank, I do need to drain all the water in the tank. It's just going to make things a lot easier. Okay, so now that the tank is fully drained, I'm going to be able to start planting. So the plant I have chosen for the scape is weeping moss. So why am I only going to plant with weeping moss? The thing is, I really want a minimalistic looking scape. I could have used a bunch of different plants to plant this tank. I'm sure it would have looked great, but that's not exactly what I wanted. I wanted something very minimalistic and something that looks realistic. I've been looking at a lot of pictures of woodland scenes, and sometimes there are 2 to 3 plants on the pictures that I'm seeing, but on a lot of them it's just completely covered with moss, and this is exactly the look I want to go for. This weeping moss has been sitting in one of my holding tanks for a little too long now. You can see it's slightly brown, but that's okay, we're still going to make it work. There are several different ways you can choose to attach moss to hardscape. So my preferred method is liquid superglue, and this is what I'm going to be using today, but you could also use thread, although it is a little bit more tedious, and in a small tank like this, it's quite fiddly. So in this next part, I'm really going to take my time. The main trick when I'm working with liquid superglue instead of gel is that less is definitely more. You only need the tiniest amount of liquid superglue. It seeps in really deep into the grains of wood, so a little goes a long way. A question I get asked all the time is how to avoid those annoying white spots from glue. If you press the moss down and see bright white blobs oozing out, it means you've used a bit too much glue. So by all means, it's not the end of the world. As the moss grows over, it will cover up these glue spots. But if you're focused on aesthetics, seeing white glue everywhere really ruins the look of the scape until that growth happens. So keep it light, you only need a small amount. Now that the technical side is out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the design. I'm placing the moss mainly along the top surfaces of the wood. In a real forest, moss would naturally settle on top of fallen tree trunks, branches, and where it gets light, so sticking to those spots makes the whole scape feel much more natural. My goal here isn't to completely cover the wood. I want to leave some parts exposed, especially along the undersides and the bases of the roots. Keep in mind that these kind of moss scapes can look extremely rough in the beginning stages. Right after planting, nothing has grown yet, and it can look pretty unnatural. But as time goes on and the moss starts to grow in, it will take off and it will look much more natural and have that mature look. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about something that's been bothering me when I'm keeping moss tanks like this. Now, everybody knows trimming moss in an aquarium can be an absolute nightmare. It gets everywhere, and no matter how much you net or siphon it out, you look back 2 minutes later and it feels like it's magically spawned right back into the tank. So I've really been asking myself, how can I get around this problem? And what I thought of doing is placing a moss carpet into the tank, so then it's less visible when there are pieces of moss on the substrate. It's not going to be as much as an eyesore. I'm going to be doing this the easy way with these small flat pebbles, but you could also use mesh grid or plastic mesh. Both of those are great options, but if you don't have those materials on hand, doing this with pebbles is so much easier. I'm applying a bit of liquid super glue and then I'm pressing the moss directly onto the rock. And then you're left with something that looks like this. So what I do afterwards is I take a pair of scissors and I just snip off all the brown pieces of moss. So this part is optional, you don't need to trim them, but I do find that these brown pieces, they tend to annoy me over time. Then I just take the pebble with my tweezers, and what I do is I slightly push it down into the substrate. You can also bury them a little bit if your rocks are slightly bigger. What this does, over time the weeping moss grows out and it's going to spread and form a seamless moss carpet across the bottom of the scape. It's probably going to take around 3 months for the moss carpet to fully grow in and join together, but honestly, that's a small price to pay. Okay, so that's planting finished. I'm going to fill up the tank. Yes, it's algae. Yes, it's everywhere. I didn't see a trace of it when I pulled this moss out of the holding tank, but here we are. Right, so enough with the drama. These are a bunch of shrimp that I took out of one of my tanks that I'm breaking down today, so I'm just going to put them inside the tank and they're going to take care of all this for me. Before I put them in, I'm just going to take out a little bit of water out of the tank because otherwise it's going to overflow. But for me, this is really the ultimate cleanup crew. They're going to take a couple of days to eat this, but it's really going to get rid of everything. Right guys, so that's the end of this video. There will be an update in a couple of weeks on this tank so you guys can see how it's doing. If you got this far, thank you very much for watching and I'll see you next week for a new video.